Hello and welcome to Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. This is Stefan, your host, British by birth, American by choice. The Founding Fathers crafted some remarkable documents that led to the creation of a great country founded on liberty and self-reliance. I have lived in the Euro-socialist nightmare, and I'm doing what I can to return this country to the vision that the Founding Fathers gave us. We need to strive to rebuild that shining city on the hill, for without us, the world has nowhere to turn for freedom. For the next hour, I will be presenting news, views, and guests that help keep the true spirit of America alive. Yes, folks, and here we go again. Another evening of a rip-roaring Patrick Come Lately talk show. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, British by birth, American by choice. Just like the Founding Fathers, and proud of it. Folks, we've got an interesting show tonight. Plenty to talk about. Obviously, the results of the Son of Super Tuesday today. All sorts of things going on over the weekend. Lots to talk about. And then there's Hill Liar up to her usual tricks. What about all that as well? So, like to say welcome to all my listeners, whether you're listening live, whether you're listening to the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us or at radio.patrickcomelately.us. That's where you come for the live show, but you can also listen to recordings there as well. But archives.patrickcomelately.us works as well. And of course you also have Red State Talk Radio Network and the 405 Media, both of which also carry this show. Plus, I believe, iTunes and YouTube and all sorts of other places where you can get this information. Why am I telling you all of this? Because I would like you to go out and tell your friends, family, acquaintances, enemies. We need to get the message out. And it's even more important now that we get the message out that we are angry, that we are fed up with the elites in Washington, D.C. And you know what? Tonight, I think we've seen that the message might be getting through. Who's left in the race? Well, there's only 3 of them now. One without a path at all to any hope of the nomination, except with shenanigans, and 2 candidates who have a good chance, either of them, of making it. So we'll see what will happen. Now, of course, the big news I think of tonight was Trump's overwhelming win in Florida, where poor Marco Rubio just absolutely got beat hands down. And of course tonight he did concede and also said that he was suspending his campaign, which he couldn't really do much else. But apart from the loss in Florida, what was interesting, in a number of the other states, he was also now ending up behind Kasich. So you could really tell that his race was run. It's unfortunate for him. He tried hard, but I don't think it was to be. And a lot of it, I've said this before, a lot of it was his own making. I can remember, because I was in Florida at the time, how excited we were to see him come from behind to beat that weasel Charlie Crist, the one who didn't make the primary and then switched sides. You know, talk about taking your ball and running home with it. But he beat him there, very much on a Tea Party message, and everybody was so enthusiastic and full of hope that somebody that we could trust was being sent to Washington. But after roundly denouncing amnesty, he went up there, joined the Gang of Eight, and offered amnesty to immigrants, illegal immigrants, that is. So yes, very disappointing that, and part of his own making. And then, of course, after that, the fact that with preparing for this run for the White House, he missed a lot of votes in the Senate. I think on top of the Gang of Eight thing, that just really scuppered everything for him. Now, as Donald Trump said tonight, he is young. He is relatively charismatic. I've seen him speak. I have to say, he speaks well in a political speech type situation. It's just unfortunate that sometimes the words he says don't match up to the actions he takes. But we'll have to wait and see. But he does have a future ahead of him. And we'll see. Well, I'd like to welcome Paul back to the chat room. Rex is there, and Carl Clave Vetter, who joined us last week. He's an author friend of Rex, and Carl Clay writes a number of books, but I think the one that he's probably most well known for is a series called Crossbreeds. I have purchased one of those, Carl, and the first one, and I've started reading it. Been quite busy, so I didn't get quite as far into it as I'd hoped before this show, but I did promise you, if you came back to the chat room, you do get mentioned. Not every week, but I will mention you every so often, and your books. And of course, you can find his books on Amazon, Kindle format, paperback format, maybe even hardcover, I'm not sure. But go to Amazon and look for Carl Clay, Carl with a K, Clay with a C, Vetter, Vetter, and look for the book series Crossbreeds, or any of his other books. But Crossbreed starts off pretty good, so it's going to be interesting to see what a good book that is. So the big question, right? An overwhelming win for the Donald in Florida. He's also won Illinois, North Carolina. He's leading in Missouri, but that's a proportional state. So I suspect whoever wins, whether it's actually Ted Cruz, whether it's Donald Trump, it doesn't really matter much. They're going to get more or less the same number of delegates out of that. The only one that he wasn't able to win was Ohio, which basically leaves Kasich in the race. For what, I don't know, because really he's a spoiler. Probably good for Donald, because Kasich is more likely to pull voters away from Ted Cruz than from the Donald, I would imagine. Could be wrong. So we'll see what happens there, but still very interesting that Donald definitely has 3 under his belt, including one winner takes all, and then with good results in Illinois and North Carolina. I think one of them, Ted Cruz, was a few percentage points behind, but all the other ones, people were 10, 12, 15, even 20 points behind. I think Florida, Rubio was almost 20 points behind Donald Trump. So is the Donald Trump train unstoppable now? Well, if you look, and I was really noticing over starting this weekend after the shenanigans in Chicago, but left and right on TV, whether it's commercials, whether it's the talk shows, just left and right. Donald did this, Donald did that. This is bad, that is bad. There is a full all-out press to really paint him as black as they can. And the more they do it, the stronger he comes back. I don't think the media, the left wing, the right wing, the GOP elites, they just don't seem to know how to combat him. And everything they throw at him, it just doesn't stick. So is this another Slick Willie? Who knows? Now, will he be able to make the 1237 delegates? There's still a lot of primaries to go before that number is in the bag, and he might not be able to do it. But you hear more and more of the pundits now saying, well, if he runs 50, 100, 150 short of that 1237, as long as he's significantly ahead of Ted Cruz, it would be difficult not to nominate him, even if he doesn't have that majority. Now, in the past, I'm a constitutionalist, constitutional conservative. That means I say follow the rules, and the rules say, right, if you don't make it on the first ballot, then some of the delegates start losing their requirement to be bound to a certain candidate. It isn't all delegates, though. The interesting thing is that there are different rules state by state. One of the things is, for example, in Florida, they have to vote for the bound candidate for at least 3 votes before they're free to make their own decision. Other states have other rules. Some of them just don't allow their delegates to switch candidates whatsoever. Other ones allow it after the first ballot. So it would be interesting to see. But you're hearing more and more pundits agreeing with Sean Hannity, and they're saying, hey, folks, even if he doesn't have the absolute majority that's required by the Republican rules, if you try and push someone else in, then there will be all hell breaking loose. And I agree with Sean. I agree with the other pundits. I think especially if they try and push someone else, and there's been rumors about a Jeb Bush coming back or a Mitt Romney. So what could happen? Well, remember I talked last show about Craig Hewlett, and he was talking about things in the past. And one of them was the fact that George Bush was basically foisted upon Reagan as his running mate, because that wasn't apparently Ronnie's choice by any means. But the powers that be, the New World Order that is behind the scene, basically took Ronnie into a room and said, you will take him or else. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. It's plausible, but no evidence about that. So what might happen? Might we get a Jeb Bush as a running mate? Will the GOP establishment foist one of those on there, or will something else happen? Now, if there were nefarious plans afoot to foist somebody totally different on them, and there's a lot of perhaps conspiracy people sort of saying, well, this is what the GOP elites are trying to do. They're trying to make sure that nobody gets enough votes to have that majority before the convention, so that once they get to the convention, then it becomes brokered, contested, whatever you want to call it, and they can start messing around, and they could get their own candidate in. Now, if that happens, like I said, I think all hell would break loose. But I think if there were any inkling of anything like that happening, as much as Ted Cruz and as much as Donald Trump probably dislike each other now after all the nasty things they've said. And in some ways that's strange, because at the beginning they were fairly civil towards each other. But if they could resolve some of those differences, if they went into the convention together and Cruz would pledge his delegates to Donald, and Donald in return might offer Ted the VP-ship, they could stymie even the GOP elites, because there would be no way then for a brokered convention, because then right? Donald would have the necessary delegates, or maybe the other way around. If Ted Cruz had more delegates by the time it got close to there, but not the majority, and it looked like the elites were trying to, carry out some shenanigans, it could be interesting. Anyway, well, so we'll see about that. Anyway, so much to talk about tonight, but we also have to play some commercials, and I see that it is that time of day again. So hang on, folks. I will be back right after these messages and a quick sip of my drink.
You can lose 10, 20, 30 pounds or more with Maximum Slim's first ever rapid weight loss guarantee. Today, you get Maximum Slim, an advanced fat and carb blocker, absolutely risk-free. The all-natural ingredients in Maximum Slim are a powerful weight loss combination. The Maximum Slim formula turns your body into a fat-burning furnace that supercharges your weight loss. Advanced fat and carb blocker stops the breakdown of sugar so your body doesn't store it as fat. Today, you'll get both of these products absolutely risk-free with no obligation. Only pay shipping. There are no expensive meal plans or exhausting DVDs. Just take Maximum Slim twice a day. It's fast, simple, and now it's guaranteed. Look, you can start losing weight today or not. Go back to your high school days and wear your favorite jeans again. Guaranteed. Call now and get both weight loss formulas free. Call 800-451-0228. 800-451-0228. That's 800-451-0228.
Doc, you gotta give it to me straight.
All right.
'Cause I'm dying here. I mean, take a look at this letter from the IRS.
Oh, my.
This is killing me, Doc. I tell you, it's killing me.
Cheer up, my friend.
Huh?
The tax doctor is here. My diagnosis tells me that you're going to be just fine.
Really?
The tax doctor will not rest until we find you the best possible tax settlement.
Really, Doc?
Guaranteed.
If the IRS claims you owe them $10,000 or more in business or personal back taxes, call a tax doctor right now. We could save you up to 75% if you qualify. Guaranteed or you pay nothing. Call right now for free details.
800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. That's 800-917-8546.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us. Hi, this is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, and we're talking about tonight's results. The Son of Super Tuesday, or Super Tuesday the Reprise, or Super Tuesday 2, whatever you want to call it. Now, one of the important things that does change the landscape that I haven't talked about is the fact that Rubio did step out today. Now, very interestingly, before the break, we were talking about the fact that, Ted Cruz and Donald could get together to prevent the GOP elites from scuppering both of them and introducing some totally new candidate like a Romney or maybe even just push Kasich up a whole pile anyway. But Kasich, what's the requirement for the GOP? You have to have won at least 8 states or something like that. So Donald and Ted Cruz are well on the way to that. Kasich won't have done that. So, but anyway, I digress. But now that Rubio is out, what's going to happen? I disagree with the pundits. A lot of them say, well, most of his supporters are going to flock to Ted Cruz. I don't think they will. I think while more will flock to Cruz than perhaps to Trump, I think a reasonable number will go to Trump as well. So I don't think it's quite as clear cut as many say. So we'll have to wait and see with that. in the next, in the next round of the primaries. I think they have a couple of weeks off, and then it all starts again. So, it's unfortunate for Rubio, and of course he's free to pledge his delegates wherever he wants, but it's be interesting to see what happens to his supporters. I'm just looking at the news here, 99% in, and Donald Trump still has a 4% lead, 0.4%, so 0.4% lead in Missouri, so that one is still not called, very, very close there, but basically it's a proportional state, so they're going to share those things. And as Rex says in the chat room, the world is against Trump becoming pres. Yes, they were, but I have to say we're beginning to see cracks, at least on the GOP side. So we want to we'll see. But now I want to come up, and this ties into what Rex said. The world is against Trump becoming pres. We've heard about all these secret meetings at Sea Island, Amelia Island, millionaires and billionaires, the Facebook guy, the Google people, working with the regime, working with left-wing organizations, even working with the GOP elites. How can we stymie Donald Trump? Well, we saw some of the results of that last Friday. Last Friday, where a huge demonstration, counter-demonstration against Trump was set up in Chicago. And all this money, all these people doing these things, it's assuming frightening proportions. And in my invitation to the show, I said, I want to give you a warning, because I want to talk about this, because not only did Friday have the effect that was intended of shutting down a Donald Trump event, but the threat of violent protests is continuing. And although we'd seen some isolated cases at his events in the past, but Friday was really shocking. There were just so many people there ready to get up to shenanigans, create mayhem, etc. Now, that's what I wanted to do, warn America. And I want to warn the other GOP candidates, or the other two remaining GOP candidates. But actually, no, the others as well. People like Christie, people like Marco Rubio, and others in the GOP, people who are running for other elections. They need to stand up. And they need to say their piece and come out on the side of free speech. They were not man enough to do that, at least the three that were in the race against Trump. So Rubio, Kasich, but especially Cruz, which disappointed me as someone who says he wants to follow the Constitution. Instead of coming out on the side of free speech, they used the opportunity to try and score political points. I think they were very, very wrong. And I think, actually, they may have strengthened Trump somewhat. But they were wrong for other reasons, not just for strengthening Trump. What nobody seems to be thinking about is that what happened, and what may be continued to be attempted in the future, what happened to Trump could happen to them as well. Right now, it looks as if the only real competition for Trump will be, can he be trusted? Imagine if the regressives were able to shut Donald down. And, after 3 or 4 things where it's just total mayhem and he can't hold his events, he might give up. Can't imagine why he'd do that, but you never know. Let's face it, he doesn't need the aggravation. He doesn't need this job. He's doing it out of the kindness of his heart, he says, because he sees what's going on with America. So he might at a certain point say, if you really don't want it, enough is enough. On the other hand, of course, he didn't get where he is today without a fight. And remember, the building industry is a rough and tumble industry. So again, I don't think that he will give up. But just for the sake of argument, just suppose that Trump did step out in, let's say, 6 weeks. The regressives would be wild with joy and would be emboldened. Does Cruz, who's, if you like, really the evangelical candidate, now remember the left just really hates evangelicals, does he not really think that the regressive hordes would swing around and focus their newly found power on him? So, Mr. Constitution and Rubio and Kasich, what you should have said at the weekend was, irrespective of what any candidate says, short of openly calling for violence, they should not be denied the opportunity to share their message, or for their supporters and other interested parties to hear that message. Now, if those three had done it, I think it would have made them seem a lot more presidential instead of just appearing to be petty, untrustworthy politicians. Of course, they couldn't possibly be that, right? Excuse me. But let's face it, what happened was actually domestic terrorism. Yes, I call that domestic terrorism. You might laugh or even get angry, but that's exactly what it was. Using violence to prevent people going about their normal, legal, daily business. I'll take my wife as an example, whose immediate reaction was, I'm not going to a future Trump rally. You never know if those thugs might start attacking us. Which is exactly the reaction that these thugs were hoping to engender. So, folks, what can we do? Well, what we can do is show that we will not be cowed by these street thugs, and we will continue to attend Trump rallies or Cruz rallies if they were to turn on him. We will keep our hands to ourselves, but we will show up in droves, not just to support a particular candidate, but also to support our First Amendment right to congregate and to hear that candidate exercise his First Amendment right to tell us what he thinks. Now, my warning to America is that this has all happened before, but not over here. Right? Now, you may think that I'm being Chicken Little and calling that the sky is falling, but is this the thin edge of the web? When and where has this happened before? Well, think about Germany in the 1930s. Did you not know that Hitler's brown shirts were very well known for disrupting the meetings of opponents? Yes, there, I've said it, Hitler's brown shirts. You might say, though, well, they were right-wing extremists and these are left-wing. But actually, both sides are tyrannical. And dare I say the word, both sides were actually fascists. I can see liberal heads exploding everywhere, at least if any dare listen to this show, and perhaps even a few so-called moderates. Or I can see them reaching for the switch and turning it off. But unfortunately, there are too many similarities. So we have to nip this evil in the bud and make sure that it does not spread. Remember, the word Nazi comes from Nazi socialist. Yes, that's right. The second word is socialist. So it's not left or right. It's tyranny or liberty. And don't forget, one of the people that is actually supposedly behind a lot of the financing of this, our dear friend George Soros. He lauds his time working with the Nazis in his homeland during the war, helping round up the Jews. And now a form of terrorism, a form of stifling dissent. And now he's trying to do the same again. So we have to keep our eyes open and be ready to stand firm against all kinds of tyranny and evil. Okay, folks, I will be back shortly. At least if the button works.
Patriot come lately. British by birth. American by choice. Just like the Founding Fathers. The voice of the conservative resistance.
Every day, millions of Americans grow more concerned about the future of our great nation. The truth is, over the last century, a small but powerful collectivist movement known as progressivism has debased our politics, our culture, and our currency. We're just a small step from falling into 1,000 years of darkness, as Ronald Reagan warned. Friend, this is Pat Boone with an important free offer on a hot new book called The Great Withdrawal by Craig Smith and Lowell Ponte. This new book explains how we, the people, can end this fatal detour into big government and get back on the path of faith and freedom charted by our founders. Call now for a free copy of the hot new book called The Great Withdrawal.
Call now for your free copy. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. That's 800-978-3901.
Owe $10,000 or more to the IRS that you can't pay? Call now for immediate help. At the Tax Relief Line, we help people just like you. If you take on the IRS alone, you could be facing levies, liens, even wage garnishments, personal or business tax issues. If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS, call now and see if you can pay less. They can freeze your bank accounts, even garnish your wages. Call the Tax Relief Line now for immediate help. Our expert team of tax professionals will negotiate your tax problem and deal with the IRS for you. If the IRS is threatening you with levies, wage garnishments, or seizing your assets, call now and see if you can pay the IRS less.
888-789-5043. 888-789-5043. 888-789-5043. 888-789-5043.
This is Patriot Come Lately Talk Radio, keeping the spirit of America alive, a proud member of the Red State Talk Radio Network. And this is Stephen, your Patriot Come Lately, welcoming you to the second half of Patriot Come Lately Talk Radio, episode 310, which I had titled A Warning for America. We've just talked about that warning, the fact that what went on this weekend I classified as domestic terrorism, but also something very similar to what we have seen in Europe. And you know, if you're not if your family didn't emigrate here in the 30s, then if you've been here for a long while, you were never faced with what went on there. And it wasn't just Germany in the 30s. There were other countries, Italy obviously with the fascists, and also fascist parties throughout Europe. And of course, all the time the left tries to say, oh, fascists, they're right wing, etc. No, it isn't a question of right wing, left wing. It's a question of liberty or tyranny, and whether it's a right wing fascism or a left wing fascism or even a religious fascism. And of course, you'll know what I'm alluding to there. It's a question of tyranny versus liberty. And you might say, well, Stefan, isn't that a little bit over the top? I mean, nah, that's not going to happen in America. Well, I've said this before. You never know, because it isn't just this violence and this trying to shut people up who have an opinion that's different to yours, because that's all it's coming down to. The left are trying to shut Donald up because he has an opinion that they don't like. Now, they don't come up with their own counter arguments. No, they just want to shut him down. That, folks, that is terrorism. But not only is it these organizations, many of which, MoveOn.org, etc., we know, are funded by Soros, but even the regime itself is busy there, right? Because they are making a frightening misuse of the law. Now, what else should we expect from a regime that used the IRS against the Tea Party and Patriot organizations, the EPA, FBI against businesses and political opponents? Remember Gibson Guitars, and the lady from True the Vote, which is actually a non-partisan election honesty group. So my next item is very, very scary. So just when we thought liberalism couldn't get any more authoritarian, any more tyrannical, the Obama regime reminds it that they can. Yes, because if you happen to disagree with the administration's view of global warming, you could face a civil suit accusing you of fraud and corruption. Now, I can hear people in the background there laughing, say, "Oh, Stefan, well, what are you talking about?" Well, Attorney General Loretta Lynch recently confirmed that she had referred the matter of whether climate change deniers should be brought to court on racketeering charges to the FBI. Think about that, folks. If you express an opinion, First Amendment opinion, that you disagree with the government, then you could face a civil suit accusing you of fraud and corruption. Now, are they going to do it for me, poor little me, with a few thousand listeners every month? Probably not. But they are doing it against big companies, fining them and just intimidating people, because basically that's all it is. Folks, domestic terrorism. Our own government is intimidating people. Think about that. And I know I sound a little bit like some of those, people that sometimes we call a little wacky. But think about it. A civil suit accusing you of fraud and corruption. They are trying to use the RICO statutes, which were laws designed to catch mafia figures on corruption charges, and now they're being twisted to punish Americans, because that's all it is, punishment to intimidate them, whose only crime is to contest the regime's view of climate change. Folks, this is really scary stuff. Now, there is a Senator, Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island, who asked Lynch about climate change at last week's hearing. He's been in this game for some time. He has long accused the fossil fuel industry of falsifying scientific research, and he wants to target the oil companies with the RICO laws in the same way that they were used against the tobacco industry. Well, first of all, the RICO laws should never have been applied to the tobacco industry. Obviously, the tobacco industry guys, their hands were not at all clean. But that's not what the RICO laws were designed for. And so now, and especially, you could argue, okay, maybe there is some difference between the health impacts of smoking and climate change. The former is well documented, while the latter is not even remotely established as a scientific fact. But anyway, so how does Whitehouse and others in the regime get off assuming that funding influences only one side of the government? They argue that the scientists supported by oil companies are corrupt. But why is a pro-global warming scientist receiving funds from a pro-global warming organization any less corrupt? The climate change world is awash in millions of dollars of political motivated research in favor of global warming. So what's the difference, folks? None. The answer is, of course, the White House prefers funding only for his side of the argument, and anybody else who does anything else, why, they must be bad. We've got to teach them a lesson. And he's not the only one. There's also a representative, Grijalva from Arizona. He's the ranking member of the House Committee on Natural Resources, once demanded information on the financial records of certain professors who were skeptical of climate change orthodoxy. Talk about intimidation, folks. If the government is asking for your financial records, isn't that just absolutely frightening? How they can get away with that? Think about it. A government official demanding the private records of an American citizen solely on the basis of where that person stands on a political issue. Folks, this is domestic terrorism. This is the worst form of domestic terrorism because it's the government exercising that domestic terrorism. The professor had committed no crime, but merely holds a scientific view opposed by a congressman for political reasons. So who knows better? A scientist who has all the credentials, has done all the studies to draw a scientific conclusion, or some tin-pot little congressman who has no scientific credentials, who questions the integrity of a scientist? Boy, they should all be fired. We should get rid of all of them. And it's not just Congress. The Attorney General's office in New York has launched a sweeping probe of ExxonMobil to determine whether ExxonMobil hid risks of climate change from investors. They're using a broad interpretation of the state's consumer protection and security laws. And the Attorney General is also investigating a leading coal company, Peabody Energy, for the same reason. Folks, this is the nanny state at its worst. We know better. We know what's best for you, and what's best for you is to believe what we say and not what scientists tell you. Folks, this is just absolutely disgusting. I meing, can you imagine? And then, of course, they'll get some activist judge to go along with that, and the court is basically being invited to silence one side of a public policy debate. Folks, this is official harassment, pure and simple. It is intended to do nothing else but to stifle free and open debate and inquiry. Another nail in the coffin of the Constitution. So you thought I was over the top with my references to Germany in the 1930s? Not at all. Okay. So, some good news? Yes, let's have some good news. Now, we know how hypocritical the left is, and we're not shocked by it anymore because we've pretty much come to expect it. So, the outrage from the left, right, from Obama to Elizabeth Warren, all your liberal friends on Facebook, right? All of their outrage to GOP frontrunners Donald Trump's so-called divisive, hateful rhetoric is exasperatingly predictable. But guess what? No one saw this one coming. Someone from the press called out President Obama's hypocrisy in blasting what he called divisive rhetoric on the part of Trump. The reporter actually dared to ask whether the president had the moral authority to tell candidates how to behave on the campaign trail after what he himself said while campaigning in 2008. What he said, and this was while he was locked in the campaign against Rhino John McCain, he told a crowd in Philadelphia, if they bring a knife to the fight, we will bring a gun. Because from what I understand, folks in Philly like a good brawl. And the reporter last week asked, how is that different from what is going on today on the campaign trail? Well, Josh Earnest had to really spin around to get out of that. I haven't spoken to the president about this, but I suspect he would include in that category in the category of what he described as some intemperate words that we regret. Yeah, you see, typical left wing, you can say what you like, and then all you have to do is apologize afterwards. But then he went on to say, I don't know how that would fall into the category, but I suspect it might. At the same time, I would hasten to point out that seeking to denigrate women or minorities or people or disabilities, Muslim, yada, yada, yada. Folks, let me ask a question. Can somebody please send me an email and tell me when Donald Trump has actually sought to denigrate women? He may have called Rosie a fat cow. I don't see that as denigrating women. He's just denigrating Rosie O'Donnell. But tell me, because they keep on saying that, and obviously if you shout it often enough, people begin to believe it. But I don't know, I've never heard that. Anyway, folks, I think it's time for a quick commercial. I see we won't have time for any music. I was hoping to play some music this week, but no time. But yes, I want to squeeze my commercial in. So I'll be back shortly.
The offer of a franchise can only be made through delivery of a franchise disclosure document. Imagine yourself being a leader in America's fastest growing demographic category. More than 10,000 people a day turn 65, and a large percentage are going to need a helping hand at home or in choosing the right assisted living community. Always Best Care is looking for people who've excelled at everything they've done, but they're seeking a new challenge. Always Best Care is one of the fastest growing companies in this explosive field. We're looking for 25 new franchisees to keep our booming business growing. We'll back you up with the strongest award-winning marketing program in the industry, and we'll provide the special training and support that's fueled our growth to prepare you for this great opportunity. All that's missing is you. Call Always Best Care toll-free at 1-800-643-7508. That's 1-800-643-7508. For Always Best Care, 1-800-643-7508. Call today.
Are you worried about losing your home to foreclosure? If you've been threatened with foreclosure or received legal papers from your bank, you have approximately 30 days to respond. If you do not respond, you could lose your home. You have rights. Act now to protect your rights. You can stay in your home. Many times you can even modify your loan. The bottom line is you can get past this, but you must act right now. Call National Foreclosure Defense right now at 800-296-3006, 800-296-3006. If you've been served by your bank and you're worried about losing your home to foreclosure, now is the time to fight back and save your home. Time is limited, so call right now. 800-296-3006, 800-296-3006. Call the professionals at National Foreclosure Defense right now. 800-296-3006.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us. And folks, we're into the final segment of the show, so just a few minutes for the final for some final words. In the break, I was reading the chat room, and Carl was saying about, it's shocking how many Americans actually support these actions of using the IRS and the EPA and the FBI to intimidate political opponents and shut people up. And I said, yeah, it is shocking and frightening, but also scary how many still support Hillyer. I mean, she's obviously an untrustworthy person who lies left, right, and center, but they're prepared to overlook that, right? And Carl said they know she's a crook and they do not care. Well, I'm just going to remind you of some more occasions where it is very obvious what a wicked witch she really is and what a cold-hearted person she is. First of all, on Monday she was being interviewed by Chris Matthews of MSNBC, and I think I won't get to it this week. Next week I've got some dirt that we have to dish on Mr. Thrill Up the Legs Matthews. But can you imagine the cold-hearted Hilaire was defending her push for regime change in Libya, which happened while she was Secretary of State, something that she was pushing for. And she said to Chris Matthews, the US didn't lose a single person in Libya, in the Libyan conflict. What a cold-hearted bitch she is. And I apologize for using that word. That's the only way you can describe her. What happened? What about the 4 dead Americans in Benghazi? It shows she has totally forgotten about them. I mean, that is what's so sickening about that woman. How people can even think of letting her have power again and putting her in the White House is just absolutely disgusting. I mean, it really is. If she were an honorable person, I'd almost say if she were a Bernie Sanders. I totally disagree with Bernie Sanders' philosophy, but I will give him one thing. He is open and he is honest about it. He has always said what he stands for, and he stands for it. And I can respect him for that. I can't respect her because she lies, she twists, but this as well. She's totally forgotten about those four brave people that died on her watch. And I mean, that is just absolutely disgusting. And at the time when she was talking about it, Matthews was actually being a little nasty to her, surprisingly enough, because he asked how she could support regime change in Libya while she was opposing the 2003 invasion of Iraq. She said Libya was a different kind of calculation and we didn't lose a single person, defending her apparently conflicting positions. Well, liar, liar, pantsuit on fire. And then, of course, one final one, she was berating Bernie Sanders for not supporting her during Hillary care, and then the first thing that Bernie Sanders did was put a video out on social media showing him standing right behind her and being thanked by her for his support. Again, liar, liar, pantsuit on fire. Folks, we have come, I see, close to the end of the show. Again, time flies when you're having fun. I think it's been a very interesting evening. I don't think Missouri has been called yet, but it's about it's a few tenths of a percent between Trump and Cruz, and as far as I'm concerned, they are just splitting the delegates there. But for the trumpeters, probably a good night. A lot of pundits are saying, well, he's not there yet, and it's still got a long way to go, and they're right. But those that think Washington needs a shake-up can rest easy that Trump is on the right path now. So all you non-Trumpers, do me a favor, please, not never Trump, because that is really disgusting, and you are not going to let Hillary get in there. We can't afford Hilaire. We can't afford the Supreme Court to be turned left-wing activist judges. So you really must, folks, be honest and vote for whoever wins. Whether it's Trump, whether it's Cruz, we have to support that person. Haven't had time to give you all the email addresses, but you can get them from the shows. All I would say is, folks, stay safe. And as I normally say when the music starts, it's time for TTFN. Ta-ta for now. Please come back next week. And remember, tell your friends and family. And remembering Primo. Good night. Thank you for listening to the show. I hope that you enjoyed tonight's topics. Whether you listened live, to a recording, or to a rebroadcast, I appreciate the time you share with me. We need to spread the message of liberty far and wide, so please tell your friends and family about the show. Thank you for helping to keep the beacon of hope burning.
This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, signing off. God bless America, and remember, L3, long live liberty.